They said Earth had violated the core codes of interstellar unity. Said our kind was too aggressive, too unpredictable, too dangerous to keep around. That's what the Council called it. Containment. But we all knew what it really was. Exile. The Council didn't even show their faces when the verdict dropped. A message. Cold, short, and final. You are hereby expelled from all galactic territories. Further violations will be met with planetary sterilization. The bastards didn't even blink when they wiped us off every star map. Trade routes collapsed. Stations shut down overnight. Even human ambassadors were hunted down and deported like criminals. No trial, no appeal. One day we were allies. The next, a species-sized threat to the balance of peace. And me? I was sitting in a rusted-out command chair on the edge of the Eridanus drift, watching it all burn down in real time. My name doesn't matter. I was a fleet captain once, now just another relic of a failed race, trying to keep a handful of ships from tearing each other apart. Supplies were low, morale lower. Every day we lost another world, another ally turned enemy, another chunk of who we used to be. But the worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was the silence. No one fought for us. No one stood up. No protests from allies. No sympathy from other species. Just quiet compliance. Like they'd been waiting for a reason to cut us loose. They didn't understand what kind of species we are. See, humans don't die easy. We adapt. We scrap. We fight like hell. And when we've got nothing left to lose, that's when we're most dangerous. We didn't go out with a whimper. We gathered what was left. Rogue ships, shattered colonies, outlaw scientists, forgotten soldiers, and we vanished. Into the deep dark, beyond mapped space, beyond their council's reach. The place they sent us? They called it the Dead Belt, a graveyard of failed terraforming projects and ancient, unstable stars. Uninhabitable, they claimed. Unsalvageable. That was their final insult. Banish us to nowhere and let time do the killing. But they underestimated just how stubborn we are. It wasn't a year before we carved out our first foothold. A rogue planet on the edge of collapse. Toxic atmosphere, broken gravity, radiation storms that could flay skin in minutes. We made it ours, reinforced it, breathed life into it with machines they thought we couldn't repair. We called it Bastion, our new cradle, our last chance. We became something new there. Hardened, lean, focused. We didn't have time for politics, no room for weakness. Every man and woman who survived earned it. Every piece of tech was salvaged, repurposed, weaponized, and the ones who couldn't adapt, they didn't make it. I watched 1,000 cowards turn into warriors, watched broken engineers turn scrap into starships, watched our children grow up without fear of aliens or treaties or rules written by species who never bled like we did. And I made a promise. One day, we'd go back. Not with apologies, not with negotiations, but with fire. That day came sooner than anyone expected. They sent a probe, council signature, a stealth-class drone, coated in that smug diplomatic finish they always used when they were watching from a distance. Thought we wouldn't notice. Thought we were still licking our wounds. We sent it back in pieces. Melted core and all. But we kept the memory banks. That's where it all changed, because inside that probe was a map. A new Stargate, hidden, experimental, opened a path to the Galactic core, straight to the heart of the Council worlds. A shortcut they didn't think we'd ever find, let alone survive long enough to use. They'd forgotten about us. Now it was our turn to remind them. Not just me, not just my crew, but all of us. The scattered fleets, the black market labs, the war-born colonies. We weren't refugees anymore. We were the human empire, and we were coming home. You don't understand vengeance until you've been humiliated by an entire galaxy, until every race you once stood beside turns their back, Pretends like your species never mattered, until they make your extinction feel like protocol. And now? Now we had their map. The probe was dissected within hours of retrieval. Engineers worked in silence, eyes sunken, hands moving like machines. None of us spoke much anymore, not since Bastion had turned us into something else. Communication came in short, sharp commands. Grunts, nods, the occasional curse when a wire sparked or a panel buckled under ancient stress. The map was encrypted in a language we weren't supposed to understand. High Council dialect, never shared, never taught outside their own bloodlines. They thought we were still primitive. They forgot who taught us war. Demas broke the code. Quiet man. Used to be a sub-level tech rat in Europa's orbital chain. Failed out of 2 academies for aggressive tendencies. Now he was running a lab the size of a battleship's hull, surrounded by weaponized AI cores and reverse-engineered alien systems he barely kept from melting. It's not just a map, he told me, voice hoarse from breathing recycled air for weeks. It's a schedule. I stared at the projection. A sphere of points, slowly rotating, glowing red where the stargates pulsed, lines of transit, timing grids, movement patterns. They're building something, Demas continued. Not here, not in their own systems, somewhere deep, past the old Pelurian graves. I leaned closer, hands gripping the cold steel railing around the console. A new capital? He shook his head. No, a vault, something big, hidden. My guess? Weapons, maybe something worse. It didn't matter what it was. The moment they thought we were gone, they started planning their next age of peace, their next clean galaxy, one without humans. They should have finished the job. The first meeting of the War Circle took place aboard the Iron Womb. It wasn't a warship in the traditional sense, more like a floating fortress, half dreadnought, half Forge World. Everything about it was brutal. Sharp angles, cannons where engines used to be, blackened plating torn from dead council cruisers, bolted onto its flanks like trophies. There were no uniforms, no medals, no ranks, just survivors. Each one had led their own faction during the Exile. Commanders, raiders, engineers, tacticians. A few were more dangerous than anyone in the room even realized. One man, they called him Grent, had once detonated an orbital station just to keep it from being captured. 2,000 souls on board. He didn't blink. I stood before them all, scarred and silent, and laid the probe's pieces on the table. A hollow map hovered above it, flickering. This is the gate, this is where it leads, and this is what we're going to take. Grant narrowed his eyes. You want to hit the core? I want to remind them we exist. We barely hold Bastion together, another snapped. And you want to fly into the most guarded space in the galaxy? I nodded. Exactly. Silence, then a laugh, low and bitter. Demas, standing in the shadows, arms folded across his chest. They made us outlaws, gave us nothing, and we still built ships they've never seen, weapons they don't understand. They think the Exile made us weaker, but we evolved. He was right. The truth no one said out loud was simple. The Exile didn't break us. It refined us, filtered out the soft, the comfortable, the indecisive. What survived was a species sharper than ever, angrier than ever. The vote wasn't close. 10 hands up, 0 down. We had our war. They came from every corner of Exile space, ships without names, crews that hadn't seen Earth in decades, scarred vessels that had traded everything for power, old friendships, ethics, even their own bloodlines. Some had integrated alien tech stolen in the early days. Others were barely more than mobile scrapyards, kept together with welds and rage. We called it the Shadow Fleet. 300 ships, no official flags, no anthem, no orders from above. Just one goal, remind the galaxy what humans really are. We didn't go in guns blazing. That would have been suicide. We tested the perimeter first. Probes, drones, disguised freighters, hit small outposts on the fringe, unmanned stations, resource hubs, took what we needed, left no survivors. And each time, we carved a message into the metal walls. We remember, simple, cold, terrifying in its implication. The first real contact came 3 weeks in. A patrol squad, Council standard, 2 cruisers, 1 scout, enough firepower to level a colony. They found us near the Arcos Drift. They didn't leave. We tore them apart in under 5 minutes. No transmissions, no surrender, just silence, then wreckage. That's when the whispers started. Council comms picked up strange signals, rogue fleets, phantom strikes, stations reporting weapons tech they'd never seen, ships appearing from nowhere and vanishing into deep gravity wells. And always, the message. We remember. By the time we reached the core gate, we were no longer ghosts. We were the storm. The gate itself was monstrous, unlike anything we'd seen, buried inside a hollowed-out moon, surrounded by defense rings, AI turrets, automated scramblers, and a fleet docked on standby. Council elite tech, bleeding edge. We didn't blink. The first wave went in cloaked. Stealth corvettes with radiation-masked hulls and AI navigators built from repurposed Terran military minds. They got inside the perimeter, took down the outer defense AI before it could react. The second wave followed. We hit them hard, no declarations, no demands. We weren't there for negotiations. We were there to open the gate. Inside, it was chaos. Council ships scrambled, formations crumbled, command relays went dark. They weren't ready for how we fought. They still thought in formations, in doctrine, in peacekeeping protocols. We fought like we had nothing left, because we didn't. Men screamed over intercoms. Lasers cut through hulls. Kinetic rounds slammed into shields. Boarding crews breached without hesitation, storming decks, gunning down everything in their path. We lost ships, sure, but everyone that died took 5 of theirs with it. And then we found the core, a data nexus, old AI, high-priority memory systems, something they didn't want us to see. Demas got there first, pulled the drives. What we found inside made everyone stop cold. It wasn't just a map, it was a plan. The Council didn't just want us gone. They wanted humanity erased from genetic memory, every trace, every outpost, every cultural record. They called it Project Solstice, a sterilization initiative in final stages. Sleeper agents, bioweapons, orbital silencing protocols. They were going to burn Earth. Not just kill us, but wipe us out so thoroughly that future species would never know we existed. And worse, some of our own had helped them. There was a man, high command, human, clean uniform, Council sigil on his chest. He'd defected years ago, claimed he was preserving humanity by integrating us into the future, said we were too dangerous to survive on our own. His name was Varlin, and he was alive. Last known location? A Council city world. Protected, untouchable, until now. We didn't argue. We didn't hesitate. The gate was ours. The data was ours. The galaxy was watching, and we were done hiding. We rallied the Shadow Fleet, repaired what we could, salvaged weapons from every shattered cruiser we'd left behind, fused alien cores to Terran hulls, powered systems with things not even Demas fully understood. We were no longer bound by rules, and we had a name now, the Human Empire, born in exile, tempered in betrayal, fueled by vengeance. Varlin had made one fatal mistake. He thought humanity was something to be managed. But now? Now we were a weapon with no leash, and we were going to show the galaxy exactly what happens when you try to erase the species that invented war. The mission was personal now. Not just for me, but for every soul who had crawled out of exile breathing sulfur, chewing metal, and dreaming of revenge. The name Varlin spread through the fleet like a sickness. Every man who'd lost a child to starvation, every woman who'd buried a lover after a failed airlock seal, every soldier who'd watched the Council paint humans as monsters. They all wanted his head. We weren't looking for justice. We were looking for retribution. The planet was called Sereth Prime, a core world, one of the inner sanctums of the Council's elite. Its surface was glass. Miles of white marble, crystal towers, and floating highways. Peaceful, controlled. The kind of place where betrayal dressed in gold robes and sat behind polished desks. Varlin lived in a sky palace above the capital spire, protected by orbital shields, a personal fleet, and walls of bureaucracy. The Council had made him a symbol of integration, a poster boy for reformed humans. He gave speeches about peace while our people starved in dead zones, smiled for the cameras while our ships were stripped for parts by mercenaries. He was one of us once. Then he sold us out, piece by piece, soul by soul. I watched his last broadcast before the strike. He was calm, elegant, speaking to a room full of species who never bled like we did, never had to fight for their place in the stars. His voice echoed through the polished hall like music. "The human empire is a myth," he said, "a dying flame. What survives is cooperation, harmony." Behind him, our people's history had been reduced to a timeline of aggression, war, genocide. Manipulated records painted us as the great mistake of evolution. Not pioneers, not survivors, but beasts. He spoke like we were gone. He had no idea we were already inside the system. We couldn't take Sereth Prime head-on. Not yet. The defenses were layered and clean, nothing sloppy, nothing exposed. Automated kill zones, precision rail cannons, a full Dread fleet in geosynchronous orbit, backed by 2 Council Guardian-class AI warbrains. One mistake, and we'd be scattered across space before we even hit the upper atmosphere. So we did what humans do best. We cheated. Demas and his crew cracked an old diplomatic beacon, a channel long dead, but still hardwired into the Council's network. We used it to broadcast a falsified signature from an Arcanian freighter carrying peace envoys. Their bureaucracy was so bloated, they didn't notice the discrepancy in the call sign. We got through their gate clean. I sat inside the hull of the disguised freighter, armor prepped, rifle in hand, face hidden behind a visor that had seen 3 planets burn. Around me, 10 other men, silent, focused, killers trained in vacuum warfare and close-quarter chaos. Our blood was ice, our hearts were steel. We weren't going in to negotiate. This wasn't an assassination, it was a message. The palace was disgusting. White halls, marble floors, holograms of peaceful galaxies, artificial waterfalls. Every inch of it screamed lie. The guards wore ornamental armor. No grit, no wear, just ceremonial shine. We moved like shadows, slit throats, silenced pulse pistols, dropped bodies in fountains. Every kill was surgical, cold, clean. They didn't even have the decency to fight back. And then we were there, outside his chamber. 2 massive golden doors, etched with ancient council language, symbols for peace, unity, trust. I kicked them open. He stood at the center of a round chamber, draped in silver. Alone. His face didn't flinch, not even when I pointed the rifle at him. "You came all this way," he said softly. "To kill me?" I stepped in, eyes locked on his. "No, I came to show you." His eyes narrowed. "Show me what?" "That humans never forget. That you don't get to rewrite our legacy and live." I threw the data chip at his feet. Everything the Council had planned, every detail of Project Solstice, every sterilization protocol, every human defector's name. He looked down at it, then back at me. I did what had to be done, he said calmly. Humanity was a threat to the galaxy. We needed restraint. I laughed. A bitter, hollow thing. You sold us out for a chair at the table, but you forgot what we're like when the tables flipped. He didn't beg. I'll give him that. He closed his eyes, and I pulled the trigger. We didn't leave quietly. The palace burned behind us as we ripped back through their security lines. By the time Council reinforcements scrambled to respond, we were already in orbit, cloaked ships pulling us in at full burn. Sereth Prime's sky lit up with fire trails and smoke. The Council called it an act of terrorism. We called it Phase 1. The news spread faster than we expected. High Counselor Varlan executed by human extremists. Shadow Fleet infiltrates Council core world. Human Empire claims responsibility. They tried to control the narrative. Called us savages. Said the attack was proof of our instability. But the stars heard the truth. Because for the first time in decades, others started listening. Small border species, abandoned colonies, neutral traders, even some old enemies. They saw the fire in our eyes and remembered what we used to be. Not monsters, but warriors, builders, dreamers with teeth. And some of them wanted in. They sent transmissions through encrypted bursts. We have resources. We have ships. We want revenge, too. The Council had ruled for too long. Grown too fat, too safe. Our fire was spreading. Demas called it the turning. I just called it payback. One by one, the fringe systems started slipping. Minor rebellions. Quiet riots. Council patrols found their supplies stolen, their fuel lines cut, their agents assassinated. And always the same sign, burned into walls, blasted into metal, carved into skin. We remember. We took their old gate next, the one that connected the trade routes between the core and the outer rim. Used to be guarded by a full wing of Council patrols. Now, empty. No one wanted to be the next Varlan. We renamed it Gate of Blood. And through it, our empire expanded. I don't know when we stopped calling ourselves survivors. It just faded. Our uniforms changed. Our ships got sharper. The desperation turned into something colder. Purpose. We weren't just trying to survive anymore. We were building something. A future that no one could take from us again. Not built on peace, built on strength, built on the bones of betrayal. And for every man we lost, 10 more rose up. They remembered the hunger, the exile, the silence. They remembered what it felt like to be erased. And they swore we'd never feel that again. The Council started to panic. They sent envoys, tried to open communication channels. De-escalate, they said. Negotiate terms. We sent them back Varlan's head in a cryopod. They shut up after that. Then came the bounty. 1 million credits, dead or alive. My face plastered across their networks. Terrorist leader, genocidal commander, human extremist. I didn't hide. I let them see me. Let them fear me, because that's what they created. That's what they built in Exile. They thought they were discarding us, but they forged a weapon with every cruel decision, every exile, every broken family. And now? Now that weapon was aimed straight at their throat. They say every empire has a moment when it stops fighting to survive and starts fighting to conquer. For the human empire, that moment came 3 weeks after we renamed the Gate of Blood. It started as a whisper. Small outer colonies going dark. Not from us, not from Council strikes. Just gone. No distress signals, no survivors, no wreckage. Dead silence. Demas was the first to suspect something bigger. They're not just losing grip, he said, standing over the flickering map table in the war room. They're preparing for something. I raised an eyebrow. Still nursing a cracked rib from a failed docking op. Another project? He shook his head. Something worse. They've accepted they can't beat us conventionally. Now they're switching to desperation. Unchecked AI protocols, ancient tech, biological warfare. I leaned closer. Proof. He slid a data packet across the table. Intercepted comms from a fallen colony. Audio corrupted, but this part survived. He tapped a key, and the room filled with static. Then a low hum, then screaming, no language, just agony. One sentence came through clear as glass. They're not council, they're not alive. We hit the closest dead zone first, a mining world called Ravkera 9. Used to be run by independent traders before the council secured it for safety. The surface was scorched black, cratered like a war zone. But the core had deep drilling systems that made it a valuable asset. What we found there changed everything. The colony was empty, not destroyed, not looted, just emptied out. Like something had passed through and taken everything organic with it. No bodies, no blood, just gear scattered on the ground, tools lying mid-task, meals left half-eaten in sterilized mess halls. It felt wrong. No scavengers, no signs of struggle, just silence. We found a survivor huddled inside a supply tunnel 2 kilometers under the surface. Young, gaunt, eyes bloodshot. He hadn't eaten in days. He didn't speak for the first hour. Just sat there, staring past us like we were ghosts. When he finally opened his mouth, he whispered one word over and over. Harvesters. Back on the iron womb, Demas pieced it together. They're not machines in the traditional sense, not drones, not combat units, more like biomechanical sweepers, council tech, blacklisted centuries ago after the Kelva massacre, autonomous, designed to remove entire life signatures from planetary surfaces. He paused, fingers tightening on the edge of the console. They're using extinction protocols. I stared at the rotating schematic. A tangled mess of spines, tentacles, and fusion coils wrapped around a core that pulsed like a living heart, not designed to fight, designed to erase. They built genocide into metal, I muttered. No, Demas said. They built it for us. This wasn't war anymore. It was annihilation. The Council wasn't trying to win battles. They were trying to end the species that defied their order. We had 2 choices. Wait for the harvesters to find our worlds. Or take the war to the place they were being built. The decision wasn't hard. Demas tracked the signal back to a system outside the standard charts. An old Council lab world they'd erased from records after some failed project involving neural mapping and bioweapons. The kind of place they swore no longer existed. Ephra Minor. We mobilized fast. 4 battalions, 7 stealth-class destroyers, 24 raiding crews. No civilians, no mercy. This wasn't about politics anymore. This was species survival. We hit orbit in silence. No signals, no warnings. The lab was underground, shielded by plasma walls and layers of sensor-jamming minerals. But Bastion had taught us how to work with scraps, how to break systems without setting off alarms. We drilled in under the crust. Quiet, surgical. The first thing we saw was rows of human bodies suspended in tanks. Thousands, some alive, some dissected, all tagged. Our own people, used for data, for processing, for testing. They didn't even kill them first. I don't know what came over me in that moment. I smashed the nearest tank open with the butt of my rifle, grabbed the limp body inside, a young man, barely 20, and held him until he coughed blood onto my armor. He was still breathing. We evacuated as many as we could. Got 32 out before alarms went off and the harvesters came online. They weren't fast. They didn't need to be. Towering masses of composite steel and flesh, floating on anti-grav coils, their limbs lined with syringes, saws, and energy vacuums. We fought like demons. Every man knew the mission: destroy the birthing core, even if it meant death. I led the final push myself. down into the lowest level, past corridors filled with butchered organs, failed prototypes, and holographic logs of experiments too sick to repeat. The birthing core was massive, a pulsating black heart suspended in a web of cables, dripping with green fluid and whispering in a language I didn't recognize. I planted the charge beneath it, turned to face the squad. "Get out." They hesitated. "Now." They ran. I stayed. Just long enough to watch the first harvester breach the wall and look me in the eyes with a face half human, half metal. "You were a mistake," it said in a voice that sounded like my own. I smiled. "And now I'm your end." I hit the detonator. I woke up 3 days later in a medbay aboard the Iron Womb. Demas was there, blood on his hands, exhaustion in his face. "You were dead," he said. "Heart stopped, ribs gone. But we pulled you out before the second wave hit. That place is gone. Gone for good." "Any survivors?" He nodded. 22, including the kid you carried." I closed my eyes and exhaled. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Then he leaned closer. "But there's something else." "What?" He looked around, then lowered his voice. "The core, it was communicating." "To what?" "I don't know, but I traced the signal." "And?" "It wasn't going to a council world." I opened my eyes again. "Then where?" Demas hesitated. "The center of the galaxy. A place the council always swore was unstable. Black hole territory, no civilization, no infrastructure. But something was there. Something older than them. Something they were afraid of. Something they'd been trying to use against us, and now we'd pissed it off by destroying its tools. We thought we were the only threat to the council. Turns out we were just one of two. The other was waking up. And now it knew our name. They always warned us about the core. Not directly. Not in treaties or memos or council hearings. The warnings came in silence. Unexplored maps, no-fly zones, ancient stories whispered by old pilots with dead eyes. You get too close to the Galactic Center, and it starts to look back at you. I never believed in superstition. Not until Ephra Minor. Not until the Harvesters. Not until Demas decoded that final signal. He played it for me in the war room, just him, me, and the cold blue light of the map table. The signal was brief. A pulse. A carrier wave wrapped in encryption older than anything the Council ever used. Once decoded, it wasn't language, it was coordinates, a star system without a name, one we were never supposed to find. We plotted the route, 4 failed stargates on the way, navigational anomalies, gravity fluctuations, all the classic signs of places where ships go in and don't come out. I stared at the map for a long time. "Prep the fleet," I said. Demas didn't flinch. "All of it?" "Every ship we can spare. We leave Bastion defended, but the rest comes with us." "What are we expecting?" I looked at him, jaw tight. Something worse than the Council. We moved like a blade through water. Silent, fast, focused. 200 ships. No comm chatter, no beacon signals. Just cold jump signatures and hardened eyes. The farther we went, the weirder space got. Stars too close together. Light bent in unnatural ways. Gravity wells that shifted like they were alive. We lost 3 frigates on the 3rd jump. Ripped apart mid-transit. No time to react. One crewman managed to scream before his signal cut. "It's watching us." By the time we reached the final gate, morale was cracking. Men who'd survived years of exile, of hunger and betrayal, were suddenly pale, silent, twitching at shadows on their monitors. They said they felt watched. Said their dreams were filled with teeth, with whispers in voices that weren't their own. Some tried to turn back. I didn't stop them. This wasn't a mission for the hopeful. This was for those of us who no longer feared death. We came out of the gate into darkness. Not the usual kind. This was deeper, thicker. The stars felt drowned. Like something was choking the light. The system was cold, lifeless, except for the structure, a black ring the size of a moon, floating above a dead planet, smooth, seamless, made of some kind of metal we couldn't scan. No doors, no windows, just a single point at its center, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Demas whispered the words first. Diarch. I turned to him. What? He didn't blink. That's what it's called. The original word was buried in the signal. Layered. It means twin rule or dual king. It's not a weapon. What is it? He looked at me. It's a throne. We sent probes. They vanished. We sent a drone with AI shielding. It made it halfway, then sent back a single image before it was gone. A human face, but not any face. Mine. That night, I couldn't sleep. Memories, except they weren't mine. Battles I never fought. Voices I'd never heard. A woman calling my name in a language I didn't speak. A planet collapsing into light, and me watching it burn, and laughing. I woke with blood in my mouth. The next day, I made the call. We go in. Just one ship. Mine, the Iron Womb. The rest would stay outside the ring, under Demas's command. If we don't return in 48 hours, collapse the gate, I said. Even if you're still in it? Especially if I'm still in it. We crossed the threshold at 0300 hours. No resistance, no movement, just silence. Then the lights came on. Not physical lights, not visible, but inside us. Every man on board felt it. Memories surfacing, thoughts not theirs. A voice like gravity whispering into the bones of our skulls. You were built for more. The ship came to a stop without orders. The main view rotated until we were staring directly into the ring's core, and the stars disappeared. The darkness pulled us in. Not like gravity, like curiosity, like something wanted us to see. We fell, and we didn't fall. There was no movement, but everything shifted. And suddenly, we were standing on the surface of a world that shouldn't exist. Sky like glass, ground like ash. A tower rose in the distance, impossibly tall, built from bones and steel. At the top, a throne. And on that throne, me, not a copy, not a clone, something older, something original. It stood as I approached, tall, hard-eyed, wearing armor I recognized from dreams I never had. It spoke without sound. We remember. I raised my weapon. It didn't flinch. You are the echo, the remnant, the refusal to die. I stared at it. What are you? I am what they feared you'd become, what they tried to erase, what they buried in exile. And then it smiled. But you crawled back, didn't you? The next minutes weren't minutes. They were truths, flooding into me, downloaded, forced, a past I never lived and yet remembered. Once, humans weren't just another species. We were rulers, not of the galaxy, but of time. Two sides of ourselves, divided in a war that shattered the stars. The peacekeepers became the council. The conquerors were sealed away, labeled dangerous, forgotten. And I was both. I was the one who survived the purge, not by hiding, by splitting, half of me into flesh, half of me into Diarch, waiting for the return, for the signal, for the reminder. We remember. When I opened my eyes, I was back on the ship. The crew was staring at me like I wasn't me anymore. And maybe I wasn't. Because now I remembered what we really were, and what we were meant to become. Not just survivors, not just warriors, rulers, and the council. They weren't the enemy anymore. They were the traitors who locked the gates, and the gatekeepers had just come home. We exited the ring with a message, not to our fleet, to the entire galaxy. broadcast in every language, one sentence. The human empire is the Diarch returned. The transmission shattered the galaxy. One sentence. That's all it took. The human empire is the Diarch returned. Some laughed. Some ignored it. Most panicked. Within 12 hours, Council fleets were scrambling across 3 sectors, trying to confirm if the message was real, if the ring at the Galactic Center had truly been opened. If the Exile had failed, we gave them no answers, just silence. And silence, in times like that, is the loudest kind of threat. What they didn't know, what they couldn't even begin to understand, was that the message wasn't a bluff. It wasn't posturing. It wasn't war propaganda. It was a statement of succession. A return not just of power, but of birthright. And whether they liked it or not, the Council had just been dethroned. I stood before the war circle again, this time on Bastion. Same cold steel table, same grim faces. But something had changed in the way they looked at me. It wasn't fear. It wasn't awe. It was recognition. They didn't need the story. They didn't need proof. They could see it in my eyes. Whatever had walked into the ring wasn't entirely what had come out. You saw it, Demas said quietly. Didn't you? I didn't just see it, I replied. I remembered it. Grant slammed a fist on the table. We've bled for years, built from dust, fought like animals, and now you're telling me this was fate? No, I said. Fate is for the weak. This was design, a design they tried to erase. They, he asked, voice sharp. I looked him in the eye. The Council, their ancestors, their architects, they split us, locked away our strength, turned one half of us into sheep, and called the other half monsters. And now? Now the monster remembers what it is. Council worlds began to fall, not by force, but by fear. Entire colonies shut themselves off from the grid. Governors resigned. Civil wars sparked in places that had been stable for centuries. The myth of Council dominance was cracking, and people finally started saying the one thing they'd never dared to say before. Maybe the humans were right. We received requests, dozens at first, then hundreds, old enemies, former allies, neutrals. Each one carried the same message beneath their political blabber. We want protection, not from the human empire, but from whatever force the Council had hidden for so long. The irony didn't escape me. They exiled us as dangerous, unstable, unworthy. Now they were begging us to lead them, and we had no intention of declining. We called it the March. One sector at a time, the Shadow Fleet advanced, not conquering, but collecting, not pillaging, but claiming. Worlds surrendered without a fight. Council fleets turned their guns on each other. Civilian stations threw open their gates at the first glimpse of our war banners. We didn't promise peace. We promised order. The kind of order born in exile, forged in starvation, tempered by betrayal. Not the soft order of treaties and trade pacts, but the sharp order of fire and consequence. You obey or you burn. Most chose to obey. The Council High Seat finally responded. A transmission, private, encrypted, pathetic. A wrinkled alien diplomat, council species, pale-skinned, all ceremony and no spine, appeared on my holo screen. He didn't waste time with greetings. You have destabilized thousands of years of harmony, he said. No, I replied. You did that the moment you exiled us. He blinked, as if shocked I'd dare speak plainly. We recognize mistakes were made. Perhaps a summit could be arranged. Talks, reparations. A ceasefire? I leaned forward. You built machines to erase us. You turned your back while our children starved in oxygen-dead colonies. You fed our prisoners to your AIs. And now you want to talk? He stiffened. There are darker forces at work here. You've seen them. You must understand. If the galaxy collapses into chaos, no one survives. I nodded slowly. I understand perfectly. That's why you won't survive. Then I ended the call. The human empire didn't march anymore. We expanded, not like conquerors, but like gravity, the kind of gravity that couldn't be escaped. We renamed the Council's inner corridor, stripped its records, replaced its statues, burned its codes. We called it the Chain, not because it bound people, but because it reminded them what happens when you try to shackle a species like ours. One by one, the Council's old allies fell silent. Some defected, some were removed. None of them mattered, because deep beneath all of this, beneath the politics, the power grabs, the falling systems, something else was waking up. Demas brought the data to me one night. His face was pale, sweating, not from fear, from awe. You need to see this. He pulled up a star map, old, ancient, built from scans the Council had locked away in their deepest archives. The ring is one of 7. I sat still, letting the weight of that settle. They're connected, he said. Not physically, quantum-linked, timed, built to open in sequence. Where are the others? Scattered. One was destroyed before the Council ever rose. 2 are dormant. 1 is missing. And the last? He hesitated. It's here. In the chain. Under Council ground. I felt something harden in my chest. So they always knew. Yes. And they kept it buried. Worse, they tried to weaponize it. I ordered the excavation at dawn. Bastion's engineers drilled for 72 hours straight. At exactly 19.4 kilometers beneath the Council's former military headquarters, we found it. Not a ring this time. A gate. Vertical. Black. Like a wound in space. No hinges. No seams. Just the cold pulse of power waiting to be woken. It wasn't dormant. It was listening. I stood before it for hours. It spoke to no one else. Just me. And it didn't speak in words. It spoke in memory. Visions of a past long erased. Humans standing shoulder to shoulder with titanic beings made of fire and logic. Armadas that spanned galaxies. Wars fought not for land, but for time itself. We hadn't just been warriors. We'd been kings, and the Council. They had been our subjects until they revolted, until they sealed the gates, until they erased history and renamed themselves as saviors. But they'd forgotten one thing. Kings don't stay buried forever. I turned to Demas. It's time, he nodded. Time for what? For the galaxy to stop pretending we're a species that needs permission. We opened the gate on the 7th day, and behind it, not a fleet, not a monster, but a council of our own, locked away in stasis, ancient humans, the ones who refused to bend, the ones who had whispered to Diarch through the void. They stepped forward in armor that shimmered with timelines. They looked at me not with confusion, but with familiarity. One of them smiled. At last. They stood before me like giants from myth. Not tall in stature, but heavy in presence. Eyes that had seen galaxies rise and fall. Skin marked with scars that weren't made by blades, but by time. Armor that shimmered with spectral reflections. War memories, encoded into the plating itself. There were 5 of them, and they didn't ask who I was. They already knew. You heard the gate, one of them said, voice deep, grounded, unshaken. I nodded slowly. I saw more than I wanted to. He smiled. That means you saw the truth. The others remained silent. Not out of fear, out of reverence, because this wasn't a meeting. It was a reunion. My blood knew it, my bones remembered. We weren't strangers. We were parts of the same whole, scattered across eons, waiting to reconnect. I asked the only question that mattered. Why now? Another of them stepped forward, female, sharp eyes, battle-worn jaw. Because the Council's leash has snapped, Because the galaxy no longer fears your survival. They fear your ascension. And they should, I said flatly. She grinned. They will. The stasis vault beneath the Council stronghold became our new war table. The Diarch Five, as we came to call them, didn't speak in vague riddles or prophetic nonsense. They were warriors, planners, ruthless architects of dominance. They had once ruled through strategy and strength, not illusion, and what they showed me made everything the Council had ever done seem like child's play. They pulled up an ancient construct, not a map, a timeline, branched, broken, repeating in loops. You were never just exiled, the first said. You were reset, I leaned in. Explain. The Council discovered an ancient relay hidden in Earth's orbit centuries ago. It was a failsafe, a backup fragment of the original human command. I blinked. You're saying Earth wasn't the start? No, he said. Earth was a cradle, not the cradle, just one of many, a fallback world. I felt something heavy drop in my chest. We weren't primitive, I muttered. We were rebooted. The woman nodded. Stripped, simplified, a controlled purge. You were given myths, borders, limitation. I clenched my jaw. And they thought we'd stay small. They thought wrong. Above ground, the human empire was now more than a fleet. It was a movement. From dead colonies to fringe traders, people were abandoning Council allegiances in waves, not because they trusted us, but because they were sick of being lied to. We stopped pretending to be saviors. That was the Council's mistake. We told the truth, raw and sharp. We were kings. They made us beggars, and now we've come back for what was ours. That kind of honesty? It terrifies rulers. But it inspires the broken. Within 2 weeks, 3 more sectors joined us. Not through war, but through rebellion. Their own people took up arms and handed us the gates. And the Council? They were cracking from the inside. We received a distress signal from Sector Valterra. Not a call for help. A confession. An old admiral, Council loyalist for over 400 years, sent it himself. His voice was shaking. I served them because I believed in peace, but the deeper I rose, the more rot I saw. We weren't protecting the galaxy. We were muzzling it. He paused. Project Solstice was only the surface. What lies beneath it is older, and it is waking up. I am defecting. I am bringing my fleet. If I am intercepted, burn everything I left behind. We never heard from him again, but his data packet made it, and it tore the last veil from the Council's face. Inside the file was footage, real-time, undeniable. A Council inner lab, hidden beneath the ocean of a world called Gesar Prime. Inside, a being, not alien, not machine, human but wrong, stretched, wired, alive but unrecognizable. Dozens of tubes fed into its brain, pulsing with code and blood, eyes white, lips twitching as it whispered through clenched teeth. Over and over again. The Diarch must not return. The scientist standing beside it? Varlin. Alive. I stared at the footage for hours. Varlin hadn't been executed. The man I killed was a construct, a decoy. His real body, still alive, preserved, wired into some kind of ancient neural amplifier. Broadcasting psychic dampeners across key systems. That's why the gates stayed closed, Demas said, shaking his head. It wasn't just tech. It was him, his mind, his betrayal, wired into the galaxy's pulse like a virus. And now he was losing control. Because I had returned. Because the signal he fought to suppress had finally broken through. The Council made one last play. They called for unity. Not through strength, not through truth, but through fear. A universal broadcast, system-wide, desperate, an ancient species, long believed extinct, was returning, they claimed. Something darker than the Diarch, something beyond human history. They called it the Architect. said it was coming to enslave all life, said we should unite under the old banner. My reply was simple. Let it come, the five warned me. The architect is real. But it is not a god. Then what is it? A mirror, one of them said. A reflection of the galaxy sphere. It feeds on hesitation, on compromise. It rose the last time we ruled because our empire hesitated. So we don't hesitate. Correct. We drew the line at Gesser Prime, not because of strategy, because that's where they kept Varlan's body. That was the root. We wouldn't burn branches anymore. We were going to rip out the heart. The final war began in silence. No speeches, no banners, just the hum of ships preparing for impact. We weren't just fighting the Council anymore. We were fighting the thing they'd kept buried to protect themselves, the proof of their betrayal, the anchor of their lies. And we would not stop. Not until Varlan's machine was dust. Not until the architect showed its face. Not until the galaxy stopped pretending that peace was ever possible without power. We reached Gesser Prime in formation. 1,612 ships, war-forged hulls, scarred by decades of exile, engines that ran hotter than protocol allowed, pilots who weren't here to negotiate. This wasn't just another assault. This was judgment. Beneath the oceans of that Council sanctuary world, a secret had slept for centuries. A weapon disguised as a man, a betrayer turned neural anchor, the living brain of an empire built on lies. Varlan. They'd wired him into a system so complex it took 20 of Demas's best minds to even begin decoding it. His mind had become their firewall. His thoughts, his guilt, turned into the last lock on the Diarch's cage. He wasn't awake in the human sense, but he was aware. Like a god dreaming of chains. And as long as he remained, the past could not fully rise. We had to kill him a second time. And this time, there'd be no body left. The descent began with fire. Council fleets were waiting in low orbit, not patrols, not guards. The remnant, their elite, they're desperate. Ships with forbidden weapons, suicidal captains, and old grudge commands etched into their cores. We lost 93 in the first 3 minutes, but for everyone they burned, we took out 5. They weren't fighting for hope. They were fighting out of fear. We fought for vengeance, and vengeance never hesitates. I led the drop team myself. We hit the Oceanic Shield facility with exosuits and breach torpedoes. The surface cracked open like rotten glass. Steam rose in sheets as pressure equalized. Below, the underwater city shimmered like a relic of an extinct age. Tall spires, neon veins, quiet corridors lined with synthetic coral and ancient council crests. A graveyard still pretending it was alive. They didn't expect us to reach the core. They thought we'd die in orbit. But they forgot what humans do when the line breaks. We don't fall back. We push through. The entrance to Varlan's chamber was sealed behind 30 meters of alloy. Council tech, quantum locked. Demas hacked it in 12 seconds. He didn't even speak, just handed me the code key, stepped back, and nodded. Whatever's in there, he said, it isn't a man anymore. I nodded. Neither are we. The doors opened, and there he was, suspended in a cylinder of black fluid, tubes in every nerve, every organ. His face bloated from decades of stasis, skin pale, hair gone, mouth twitching, but his eyes, wide open, and staring right at me. "Do you remember?" I asked, voice cold. His lips didn't move, but his mind spoke. "You weren't supposed to come this far." "I know, that's why we did." The lights in the chamber flickered, the machines around him groaned. The walls seemed to breathe. "You think this ends with me?" the voice echoed. "No," I said. "You're just the last lie we need to bury." He twitched, painfully, slowly. "Then bury me. But know this, there is something beyond this war, something older, something that sees what we do not." You mean the architect, I said. He didn't answer. But he didn't need to, because I could feel it now too. Behind the static of his decaying mind, beneath the humming servers and flickering lights. It was listening. The room shook, not from impact, from presence. Something was arriving, not in space, in us. Visions flashed behind my eyes, stars folding, time shattering, voices whispering across aeons, a tower of bone and light wrapped in human screams, and at the top, no face, just a shadow. The architect, the last weapon the council never understood. Not a god, not a demon, a reflection of fear, of failure, of everything the galaxy was too afraid to become. Varlin's body began to shake violently. The machine screamed. Blood flooded the tank. Demas shouted, "He's channeling it!" I grabbed my rifle and walked straight to the console. "It's done," I said, and pulled the trigger. The chamber exploded in light. The tank shattered. Varlin's remains liquefied instantly. The system collapsed. But the silence that followed wasn't silence. It was a pause. The kind a predator makes when it's been cut and starts to get serious. The architect spoke, not in sound, but in memory. Every man in our fleet, every soldier, every captain, every engineer saw it. The burning of Earth won, the rebellion of the first humans, the locking of the Diarch gates, the creation of fear, the building of control, the rise of the council, and underneath it all, a single truth. Humanity was never the enemy. We were the answer. But they feared the answer, so they buried it, erased it, broke it into fragments and scattered it across timelines. And now, the fragments were reuniting, not because of prophecy, because of rage. The architect offered one thing: surrender. "Bow," it said, "and I will spare the systems. Let the council remain as stewards. Let memory fade again." I responded the only way a man born in exile could. I remember everything, and I said the final words of the Diarch legacy: "We do not bow, we burn." We unleashed the core cannon, fused technology, stolen AI, ancient Diarch coding, and raw Terran chaos. It wasn't a weapon, it was a reminder. We aimed it at the heart of the architect's echo signature, somewhere between dimensions, and fired. Reality cracked, not space, meaning. The galaxy trembled, not from loss, but from awakening. Because for the first time in thousands of years, humanity didn't just fight back. We won. The architect screamed as it fractured, its hold over memory, time, fear, all shattered. The illusion was over. The council collapsed in one night. Their fleets disbanded. Leaders executed by their own. Worlds declared allegiance to the only banner that had never lied to them: the human empire. I stood on the bridge of the Iron Womb, watching the stars. Quiet. Not because we were done, but because we were home, not to Earth, but to truth. Demas stood beside me. "You know they'll fear us now more than ever." "They always did," I said. He looked at me, eyes narrowed. "What now?" I turned to the console, activated the Diarch beacon, and broadcast across the galaxy. "We were exiled. You made us monsters. You erased our history. Now we return not as